Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan could be on the verge of becoming the next Speaker of the House. Could happen, as soon as Tuesday. But that's only if he can get the at least 217 votes needed to claim the gavel. Jordan was nominated last Friday, but needs the support of nearly all House Republicans. They've been searching to fill the top congressional post since ousting Congressman Kevin McCarthy of California almost 2 weeks ago. Who can forget? CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now from Capitol Hill. Scott, there has been movement in the direction of Jim Jordan today, suggesting he may be on the verge of doing it.
There's been a rapid coalescing around Jim Jordan. I spoke with one of his surrogates this morning who said this is going to happen. It's going to happen in short order. So that surrogate was either optimistic or prophetic, because we've seen some of the congressmen and congresswomen who either equivocated about Jim Jordan last week or said they're not going to support him. Today announced they're going to support him. Several of them made those announcements either on Twitter, now known as X, or to media interviews in their home districts or here in Washington, D.C. One of the surrogates for Jim Jordan says the leverage applied was effective, that these members of Congress who were uncertain about Jim Jordan were hearing from conservative activists who show up in primaries. And these are just some of the individuals who today announced their support for Jim Jordan. And when it comes to these leadership races, Ed, you know this, it's contagious. When people start shifting in the direction, others are inclined to follow. And if they're going to do this, as promised, at 12 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, a public roll call vote, it gets more and more difficult to be a dissenter, to be a contrarian when your numbers are thin. We caught up with Jim Jordan late this afternoon, who said he is particularly optimistic about tomorrow. Take a listen.
You got to have the House open to do the work of the American people. You can't get the House open until you have a speaker. So I think it's going to happen tomorrow.
Do you think you have enough votes to reach 217 on the first round?
I think so.
And if you don't, what happens?
Vote again.
Just to set the stage, Ed, Democrats remain unified behind Hakeem Jeffries of New York. This is not going to be a bipartisan coalition, but Jim Jordan, who can lose only 4 or 5 members of his House Republican conference, is getting very close to that magic number.
He is, in part because I want to put back up those baseball cards of the 4 or 5 now that say they're with him. It includes Vernon Buchanan of Florida, Ann Wagner of Missouri, Ken Calvert of California. Remind the audience why votes like these matter.
Well, Vernon Buchanan, I spoke to him Friday. The Florida congressman has been around here for nearly 2 decades, was telling me he's looking for other candidates. He's looking for somebody else. So him flipping this quickly builds momentum for Jim Jordan. But Mike Rogers and Ken Calvert have a unique distinction. They are both on high-ranking committees in impactful places. Mike Rogers chairs the Armed Services Committee. Ken Calvert is what they call a cardinal, a chairman of an appropriations subcommittee. They have unique heft because of those positions, but also some of the concern, Ed, was about Jim Jordan potentially not supporting more financial aid for Ukraine. Mike Rogers and Ken Calvert getting on board indicates Jim Jordan might, in fact, be supportive of their views on Ukraine funding.
I thought the Mike Rogers development probably was the biggest tell today. You're right, because there had been this concern about national security or seriousness when it comes to that and putting up the money needed to back up the rhetoric that we've seen from all sides regarding Israel especially, but also Ukraine beyond that. You heard Jim Jordan there do the Schoolhouse Rock on what happens if he doesn't win. Who else is in the wings if he doesn't at this point, and how many more rounds would it go?
That's really telling, Ed. We haven't heard another name surface. We were expecting one today because it appeared Jim Jordan's hold on this nomination was uniquely fragile after winning it by just a narrow margin last week and winning it over somebody who didn't announce his candidacy until minutes before the vote. Without hearing that second name, there's a vacuum there. Of course, anybody who wants to dissent from Jim Jordan can just pick a name of somebody. It can be Santa Claus, it can be Mickey Mouse, it could be another member of the House Republican Conference. But that there's no second candidate means there's nobody else to coalesce behind, which gives Jim Jordan more leverage ahead of tomorrow.
You think he's joking? He's not, because anyone can be nominated House Speaker, right? You don't have to be a member of the House. There is another matter you were tracking down the street from where you stand right now, and that is the potential for a gag order on former President Donald Trump in the federal case brought by the special prosecutor Jack Smith. There was a bit of a ruling this afternoon that set some boundaries.
Now, big early round victory, Ed, for the special counsel, Jack Smith. Not only did the judge in the case, Tanya Chutkin, say publicly in court she's sticking with that March 4th trial date she set. She is not delaying this case, and she's not delaying it past the election. That's a win for Jack Smith, even though it was a bit of a footnote in today's hearing. The bigger picture was the gag order she put in place effective immediately, limiting what Trump can say, targeting 3 different groups of people. Jack Smith and his family, the special counsel. She took special objection, she says, to Trump calling him a thug. The judge says any other criminal defendant using the phrase thug targeted towards authorities would likely face sanctions. Also can't make statements about witnesses in the case. That could include Bill Barr, General Mark Milley, Mike Pence, Brad Raffensperger. And she says Trump can't be invoking or targeting court staff, the prosecutors, or the judge herself. And she referenced the incident a few weeks ago where Trump was alleged to have posted a photo of a staffer of a New York judge handling one of his cases. She says all of this shows you have limits to your First Amendment rights when you're a criminal defendant. Ed, the defense was counterpunching, trying to fight back at this gag order and saying, why should Trump be limited if Joe Biden and Hunter Biden aren't limited in what they can say? And the judge says Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are not criminal defendants in this court.
So they cannot do all those things. I think we have a list of what he still can do as well that we should show people, because this speaks to a lot of what voters have been hearing from him over the last literally for more than a year, saying he can be unfairly prosecuted. He can criticize the Biden administration and the Justice Department. He can assert his belief that this is all politically motivated and continue to fundraise off of it, basically. It's those more specific restrictions now in place that really will test his ability, for lack of a better description, to keep his mouth shut, at least when it comes to those specific concerns.
The judge was pretty clear here, and the prosecutors made the same argument that she doesn't want Trump chilling future witnesses, threatening, harassing current witnesses. They don't want to limit his campaign speech. I mean, everybody's acknowledging he's a candidate, a front runner. His opponent would be President Biden. The judge says we can't stop him from criticizing the Biden administration. Judge even said you don't have to stop, if you're Donald Trump, criticizing the District of Columbia, which he called filthy and crime-ridden. The judge says if that taints the jury pool, jury selection can weed out somebody who may be adversely impacted, but not witnesses. Not the authorities, not the special prosecutor, the judge, or the judge's staff. All of that, the judge says, can be deemed threatening and a breach of the administration of justice, which she says gives her the foundation for this ruling.
Fascinating that they were making the what about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden argument in a court of law when that's more of a court of public opinion issue. But obviously the judge there struck it down. Scott MacFarlane, you have a busy week ahead of you on multiple fronts. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Ed.